So welcome back, folks, to my channel. Today I'm just going to talk a little bit about dashboard design and the elements, the controls, and how you can do things and make your dashboard more efficient so that you don't make some of the mistakes I've made on my journey. So what you can see in front of me here is this is the, let's just call it version 1 of my dashboard. There has been several versions in the past, but for the purposes of this video, version 1 of this dashboard. Now this is a nicely laid out dashboard, as far as I'm concerned. It's subjective, I suppose, if you have different ideas about how dashboards should look. But I've designed this dashboard for my folks at their house, so the dashboard's all about ease of use, accessibility, clean backgrounds, easy to use functions, etc. So what you can see on screen here is this is the home page of the dashboard, and if we tab through each of these pages at the top here, these are sort of master files, master shortcuts that take you to specific areas of the application that I can scroll through, and it then tabs me through these pages. Now, as you can see, as we've been moving through here, there's a line underneath these controls, and this is just a way of denoting that you're moving through the dashboard, and it tells you what page you're actually on. Now, dashboard design is really straightforward to do in Home Assistant. It's not a difficult task to do, but sometimes you can end up going down a rabbit warren of starting off in something, and then you start looking at what the community have done. People have, given you suggestions. The developers of the Home Assistant product have said, go and try this, go and do that. So I'm as guilty as anyone of looking through a product and then starting, on the journey and how to use it. But sometimes that can lead to bad behaviours, and I often call that the thing when you're learning to drive a car, for example. You're learning to drive with the sort of the 10 to the 2, holding on the steering wheel. That's where they always teach you to do that, to exhibit good and positive behaviours. But sometimes, as human beings, we're guilty of going down somewhere entirely different. And this version of this dashboard is an example of that. Now, it looks absolutely fine. If I go into the kitchen, I can see everything in the kitchen here. I've got a sub-menu of items that I can then tab through, going into the lounge, going into the dining room, etc. All of this dashboard would work. It works absolutely fine. But if you happen to notice, as I'm clicking through some of these links, things take a little bit of time to load. And that's due to one particular problem. This dashboard has been constructed using the standard out-of-the-box features of Home Assistant, along with a community product for dashboard design called Mushroom Cards, and then another community product called Card Mod. Now, the way that Home Assistant loads its dashboards is that it loads the page first with all the cards and all the information that you see. So each card gets loaded, the icon gets loaded, etc. But the textual elements, like these things here, they also get loaded at the time of load. But out of the box, if you were to install Mushroom Cards, a lot of the text sizes aren't suitable across the board. They might be too small for you, they might not be bold, they might be cut off. And what I mean by cut off is if you type in a particular item in here, like for example the Y down the bottom there, the standard card will actually cut off the bottom of the character down here because of the CSS element that it uses to denote the height of this field. So it'll chop off that little bottom part of the Y. So the standard out of the box functionality basically then has to be modified in order to get you a dashboard that's more akin to maybe what you want, which is maybe slightly larger text. You want to have this black line underneath your control. So in order to do that, you need to use a product called Card Mod. Now, the way that Card Mod works is that when the page loads with all of these cards on it, Card mod then applies a skin over those cards to adjust the size of the text, if you've denoted what that is. Put this black underline here, depending on whether or not you're on a particular one of these items. So if I click through to the lights, it will move from the home page to the lights, and it will put the black line underneath there. So it allows you to do all of these functions, but, and here's the caveat, if you do and apply card mod to every single card that you've got on this page, it can have an impact on the performance of the page. So if I actually click through these pages, you'll see as I'm moving through that things just take a little bit of time to load as we're coming through it. So I'm scrolling through and I'm clicking through, and it just takes a little bit of time to load, okay? And it's not the greatest. It's not the experience that you want to see as an individual. So I can show you what that looks like. So let's have a look at the code for this button at the top here. So if I go into the edit mode of the dashboard and I go down to edit at the bottom, this is the editing window for Home Assistant. So if I go down here, you can see this is the all the controls. So we're in a mode here where the pages basically loads one after the other. So 1 is here, 2 is here, 3 is here, 4 is here, 5, etc., 6, 7, 8. That corresponds to these numbers at the top here. So line 1 is the top one, and then the icons that are in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that corresponds to these numbers down here. So basically row 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, etc. And that's done with what's called a horizontal stack. So this is a horizontal stack of icons. Now, if I scroll down the page here, you can see I've got a simple icon for home, which is material design icons for home, which is what that little icon is there. It's got a default color of blue, and that's fine. That's standard card functionality. But this black line that you see underneath here, for example, where is that in the code? Can't see anything in this code to denote that black line. Okay, so I need to dive into this, which is the code editor. Now this is the code for that button. Now right down the bottom, you can see this thing that says card mod. Now that card mod has a style applied to it, and then we're applying a change to the card's HA card, so Home Assistant card CSS style. And what we're doing is we're doing a little bit of coding here. So this code here basically says if the value of a helper, and I'll talk a little bit about helpers in another video, but for the instance here, a helper is just in this case, a drop-down list that has several values in it, like home, lights, garage, lounge, etc. It's basically saying if the value of the drop-down list is home, then I want you to make the bottom of that card solid black and 3.5 pixels in size. So that black line down there is being done by this code. Now that's absolutely fine. You can do that, and that's the only way that you can actually apply that to this card. You can't use the default functionality of this mushroom card to generate that line without diving into card mod and using that functionality of card mod to augment your card. So in order to do things across the board, if we go and look at this second one here, which is my date time, my custom date time that I've created, if we go to row 2 and have a look at that, we can see I'm using a sensor called custom date time sensor. So this is my own sensor that's built to provide this entire string here, which is the date, the day of the week, the date with the appropriate letters after it, the month, the year, and the time. So I've got code that's actually generating that for me. If we go into the code underlying in here, what you'll actually see is down here we actually have a piece of code here, which again in card mod, and this code is generating some elements to make this text larger than the standard out of the box size. So I'm adjusting the padding of the item. I'm making the text size 30 pixels. I'm making the line height size 35 pixels. Now, the line height is the size of the textual field so that I don't get the little chop off of the bottom of the characters down here. And then the font weight 500, and that font weight is basically bold in essence. This code here, which is display none important, this code actually removes a little chevron at the right hand side of this code piece here in the time, and that's because when I click on this option here, it generates a pop-up for my Wi-Fi guest password. So it's a QR code that pops up. Now, I don't like the fact that it generates a little kind of chevron at the side there, so I put this piece of code in that basically hides that from view. Okay, so every single one of these controls that you see on this page, the text here, the text on these icons, etc., all over the board, are all controlled by that card mod. Now, as I said earlier on, when you do that, it has a detrimental impact to the performance of the page, because in essence, the page loads and then card mod runs and applies all of those changes to the cards across the board. And that has an impact on the performance of the page. So if I click on kitchen, you'll see the page loaded and then that black line appeared after the page loaded. Again, if I click on lounge, page loads and the black line appears last. That's because card mod is applying that retrospectively on that page. And every element that you see here, the size of this text, the size of this text, the size of the text in this control, the size of the text in these light controls, everything on this page is being manipulated by card mod. And it works fine, but if you want a really seamless experience with Home Assistant, card mod needs to be used sparingly on your page in order to ensure that you get a smooth experience. Now, I'm running this entire Home Assistant environment on a reasonably spec'd Raspberry Pi Model 4B, and that is running on the 8GB version of memory with an SSD in the background, and it's Ethernet connected to the network I have in the house. So it's absolutely fine for running all of this, but I wanted to make this even better. I want to make this even better. So we'll come on to the next bit in a second. So lots and lots of talking, but this is how we need to explain things. So if I wanted to make a change to the size of the text across the entire dashboard, you can start to see where the problem would actually then start to arise. If I want to make a change to the size of the text on the home page and every other page that I have across the board, on every other page, because I've got this entire dashboard built from card mod, and every card has a card mod to adjust the size of the text, the size of the field, the boldness, or the font weight, etc., I would have to go through every single control across the board, and that takes an awfully long time, I tell you. I think for this dashboard, when I was making some changes to it recently, I wanted to make the text bold because it used to be standard, just standard formatting, and it took me about 2.5 to 3 hours to make that single change, because I had to go through the first one, create the first one, and then copy paste that code to every control on every page. Now you can see that that's going to take an awfully long time for you to do that, especially if you look through my controls, because I've got multiple pages, multiple controls on all those pages, and you have to make it in one or two places. So here's an example here. You've got the primary field and the secondary field. If you want to make the primary field bold and the secondary field bigger in text, you need to make that change in that file, in that card, in the one time, and then copy it into every single card that's in this page. So it takes a very long time to do that. So where does that take you then? Um, so let's go on to another dashboard that I have, which is, let's say this is version 2 dashboard. So version 2, on the other hand, if we go into it, is in essence this version of the dashboard. So version 2 is similar to version 1 in that it's got bold text, it's got icon sizes, but you'll notice here when we're looking at things, the icons that are on here are slightly bigger than the ones that were on the previous page. The text is slightly bigger. I've got a different color control at the top here, right? Now, this dashboard is a blend of using what's called Home Assistant themes and a little bit of card mod. Now, we can't avoid using card mod. I never said that we were going to avoid using it. I said we wanted to try and thin down the usage of it on the pages to make sure the pages load nice and fast. So what we're seeing here is we're seeing the home page again, but instead of the buttons at the top here having colors in each of the icons, what I've done here, and instead of having the black line underneath, I'm filling out the color of the button. So as I tab through, so I'll go to the next one, and then I go to the third one, and I go to the fourth one, and I go to the fifth one, go to the sixth one, and I go to the seventh one. You can see that as I'm moving through, the icons that I'm not on, the pages I'm not on, are in grey, but the icon that I'm on is fully coloured with a white icon to make it easy to see against the coloured background. And that's really good because that's using one single card mod change on that card, but nothing else. It's just having to load that single element. So if I go back to the home page, it goes back, you can see how quickly that page is loading. It's just having to process one single change of card mod in that page, and that's just that control at the top there to generate that background color. That's all that it's doing. It's not having to do loading the text sizes, the icon sizes. It's not having to do any of those changes because those are being handled in a slightly different place. And where does that happen? And that happens in what's called the themes file. Now, Home Assistant, like any browser-based designed product, has web pages and controls on those web pages, and then underlying that it has what's called style sheets, CSS style sheets, cascading style sheets. And that style sheet essentially has a list of elements in it, such as text size, the weight of the text, the size of the field, the size of the icon, etc., the layout of the icon, the spacing of the icon, the spacing of the card, how the card actually is shown applied to it. And that file then is referred to inside this particular card and dashboard. So that means that the page will load with that style sheet and apply all the changes at load point, and then the only thing that CardMod then has to do is do that single change for the button at the top. It then basically just has to do one single control change. Everything else here is done at the time of the page loading, and that is great for performance. Okay, so if we go into Lounge, if we click into the Lounge, you can see how fast that page loaded there. There was no worry about how that was presented and how that was shown on site. So if I go into the page here, I can see I've got a sub-menu of buttons here, and each of these areas here have associated icons with them. Now you'll notice the ones that are greyed out are the one, we're not looking at that page just now, but the one that has the dark icon is showing us that we are on the lounge. If I then click into the kitchen icon then appears. If I kick into the utility room appears. So it allows me to see visually what room I'm on, but it's not doing that in card mode. It's actually doing that in the standard card functionality that's out of the box. So it's a very, very fast load. It doesn't have the background like the main buttons did on the previous pages. It just changes the color of the card and the icon that's in here. And because it's doing that in the native card, it then doesn't have to load any card mod. So every single control that you see on this page, we go back to the lounge, every single one that you see in this page all loads from a themes file. And that has so many advantages to you as a user who's building this out of the box. How does that translate for you as an individual? Well, that means that if you wanted to make a change to the size of the text on every single one of these cards, so this text here on the kitchen or the lounge, and this text of back door here all refers to the same entity of primary. So this is called card primary text size. If I go into the themes file and make a change to the theme, that single change will ripple through that entire dashboard in a matter of seconds. So instead of on my previous dashboard, if I needed to make a change, it took me 3 hours. If I want to make the text bigger on these icons, I can, and I can do that in seconds. And let me show you how that's done. So I'm just going to open up what's called the file editor. So if I go into the file editor, this takes me into Home Assistant and the back end of Home Assistant. And this is the theme for this tablet. So these are all the elements that I can manipulate. So some of these are Home Assistant specific elements, but if I scroll down the page a little bit and go to the one that says card, which is denoted by this comment, you can see that the primary text size in this case is 20 pixels. The secondary text size is 18 pixels. The primary font weight is 500. The secondary font weight is 400. And the primary line height, the size of the field in essence, is 25 pixels, and the secondary is also 25 pixels. You can see that the primary card color, that is the text color, is using a variable, and this variable links to the Home Assistant variable of primary text color, which in this case is black. So if I want to make a change to that card, let's just, for instance sake, let's just change that to 30, just to make a bit of a joke here so you can see the instant change. So if I click on save at the top here and save that file, I then need to go down to the developer tools, I need to go to the actions, and I need to reload the themes. So if I click on perform action, and then I go back to the tablet, you can see that all of the text has got massive, and that applies across the board. Okay, so that applies in, if I go into the lights, you can see all the lights text has all got enormous, and you can start to see where that line height has an impact. So you can see there, because we've made the text 30 pixels, but we haven't adjusted the line height from 25 to say 35, it's chopping off the bottom of like the P here. So it has an impact to your dashboard. So if we click through in each of the areas here and we go through and we go to the security area as an example, you can see all the text there is all adjusted automatically on the fly. Now that is a massive time saver, and you need to educate yourself on how to use themes in Home Assistant. It works so well, okay? So if I go back to the home page and I go back to the file editor again, open that up, go down to where I've made that change. So I'll scroll down here, so 30 goes back to 20, make that save, go down here, reload the page, and if I then go back to the dashboard, you'll see the text is all adjusted back to normal size. And I approve that, I'll go to the security page, and you can see the text is back to normal size. So a much, much better way of dealing with your dashboards is to use theme files and to use card mods sparingly, because that means when you apply all the changes through a theme file, all those page loads will all happen at the same time. When the page loads, all the text will be applied, and then card mod only needs to then apply one thing to this page, in this case put that background color on there on the icon at the top. So if I click onto the home page, you can see how quickly that home page loads, and the icon then skins itself appropriately, because the card mod is only having to do that to one single control rather than an entire page as it did before on version 1 of my dashboard. So an absolutely fantastic way of learning how to do things. And if we go into the code in here, I'll prove to you that there's no code getting done in these buttons. So we had a look before at the code for the clock in the previous dashboard. So if I click on here, you'll see it's the same thing again, my custom date time sensor. And then if we go to the code, you'll see I'm only applying that code for card mode to hide that little chevron at the left hand or the right hand side of this control. But there's no code in here to show the size of the text, the size of the field, the font weight. That is all being applied at the time of load through the themes file. So it's a much, much better way of doing things, is minimizing what you're seeing on screen and how that operates. So let's close that. Let's prove to you again. Let's come down to the controls down here, scroll down and look at the control there. You'll see there is no card mod in this control for the master bedroom. There is nothing. So that is being generated by the themes file. Okay. So a lot easier to create your dashboards. Now, last bit of this dashboard design is in the previous version, I was building the dashboards using panels in Home Assistant, and you had to then apply your theme to that entire dashboard through your user profile, which is at the bottom left of this window, which is down off of the screen here. So I would have to go into the area. So if I click on my name down the bottom, I would have to come in here and apply a theme in this drop down. Now you'll see the theme is blank in here. That's absolutely fine. It needs to be blank. I haven't got a theme applied to my account here. But if I go into the dashboard, as we were in earlier on, and I click on the edit to look at it, if I come in here, this is using Home Assistant's excellent sections dashboard. So if I click on the edit for the home page, you'll see in this sections view of layout, I've got the ability to define a theme that will be applied to that entire page. And in this case, I've got my theme of wall-mounted tablet being applied here. So every single one of these pages has this theme denoted, and that means that regardless of what my user setting is, the theme that will be applied to this page is the wall-mounted tablet theme. And that gives you so much more control over what you have available to you. So that's in essence the video for today, to show you the difference between using standard out-of-the-box themes like Mushroom Shadow and Card Mod, but you'll have potential performance impacts because you're having to make those changes after the page loads versus doing those changes in a themes file and referring the dashboard to that single themes file, and then using very minimal card mod to do fancy effects on your page. So if you want to learn more about theming and how that's done and how that's controlled, please drop me a comment on my page and on the video, and I will do my best to do another video for you describing how that functionality works and how you can use it yourself to the best effect. So thanks very much for joining me. This is Sotamo signing off for the day.